Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of PEM Rules, the Pediatric Emergency Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Yaron Ivan, as usual. And today I would like to have a discussion about the role of our child life specialists who help me take care of my patients and help my patients have an easier, better experience, which helps me have an easier and better experience. No better way to do that than to speak to one of them. So today with us is Jessie. Jessie has been our child life specialist. I've been working with her for almost 4 years. Jessie is originally from Illinois. She went to school right here in town at the University of Central Florida, majoring in psychology. She then took the National Certification Exam for Child Life and has been a certified child life specialist working in our Pediatric Emergency Department for almost 4 years. Good morning, Jessie. Thank you very, very much for being with us today. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So for the listeners, I already introduced you and said a few words about you, but for the listeners, I would say that Jessie is the epitome of a child life specialist.
Thank you.
You're welcome. She's always happy, always smiling. She looks like Jessie from Toy Story. She sounds like Jessie from Toy Story. And I don't know if you saw the movie with Robin Williams, I forget the name, but if you were to have a medical condition, it would be excessive happiness.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I can't remember the name of that one either, but I love it. The one with the noses.
When he's a doctor, yes.
Yes.
When he's a med student. Excessive happiness, which is great for a child life specialist. That's exactly what I would expect a child life specialist to be. So again, Jessie, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. And Jessie, we've worked together for 4 years. I think of child life specialist as an integral part of our work. You guys make my life easier, my patient's life easier, which is, really the same. And I'd love to hear from you, Jessie, about the challenges you face specifically as a child life specialist in the Pediatric Emergency Department. I know the child life specialists work upstairs on the floor in the PICU, but really, from your perspective, the challenges that you face as a child life specialist in the Pediatric Emergency Department.
Yeah. So I feel like the challenges depend a lot on the area, just like you said, and the challenges that we face in the PZD can definitely vary on how critical the patient is. So one of the main things I do is advocating for the patient's needs and helping everything be as atraumatic as possible. That's the main thing that I do in the PZD. And so due to the nature of the emergency department, I can go into one room and have a fun bubble party while distracting for an IV placement. And then the next room, it can be a very sad child who's crying over a broken arm. So that's one of the biggest challenges, is changing your affect depending on what room you go into, and match what the affect is. So things can change extremely fast in the emergency department, like you know. So being able to build rapport with those patients and their families is a really key part of my job. So if I'm able to calm down the parent, then therefore the child's going to have less anxiety, which is one of the biggest things that I try to do. If they can feel the anxiety, then the child's going to be very anxious.
Sure.
So this can just be done by explaining things in a developmentally appropriate way. And as simple as putting on a family movie in the room, then the whole family's affect and their anxiety is definitely going to go down.
Sure. Agree with that.
Yeah. So I'd say one of the biggest challenges that I do face in the emergency department is having children who have a history of autism, who are having behavioral issues, and then they're labeled the wrong way of a Baker Act. So for those who don't know, a Baker Act is a term that we use here in Florida for a person who is harming themselves or others, and they are placed in a psych facility for at least 72 hours to get the mental health that they need. But in Florida, it is a law that you cannot Baker Act a child or adult who has a diagnosis of autism. Instead, you should get them the help that they need from their loved ones or at a facility who knows who to take care of these children and how to take care of them the best way possible for them. Mm-hmm. So it also does not help them when you do put them in those Baker Act facilities. It actually can cause more harm to the child. So most of the time, my job is getting together with the doctors and all of the team, the nursing team, to figure out what's the best thing for these patients. So that's probably the biggest challenge, as well as just figuring out what that child needs for them is really hard in a fast-paced environment.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think autistic kids pose a challenge for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly when there's a potential Baker Act or potential harm to others or self. That can be a very challenging situation. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so the cool thing at our hospital specifically, we do have a program for our children who have autism or any other type of sensory disorder. We call it the STAR program here. So that stands for Sensory Tactile Auditory Rock Stars. And these patients, like I said, they could have autism, they could be blind, they could have any other sensory disorder. And so that way we can kind of figure out the best way to help those children. And with us child life specialists, we have those tools to help them. We have the vibrating mats, we have the lights that they like and the bubbles and all of that. So that's really helpful, I think, also to have in the emergency department.
Very good. So that's great that we have that, and that's obviously very useful. And again, I completely agree that autistic kids are. I think it's a challenge for the parents. It's definitely a challenge for the patient. It's a challenge for the whole team.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's cool, especially to have our team comes together and all of us working together to figure out what's best for that patient.
Agree 100%. So tell me, Jessie, I've worked with child life specialists for, I think, from the very beginning of my career. We had them in residency. I definitely had them as a fellow, as an attending. And I find you guys to be extremely helpful. I don't always remember that you guys are around. And sometimes it's so busy, I got to admit, the kid I go in to see the kid and I totally forget there's a child life specialist who can help me with that. And I have to be reminded. And I guess in my head, I have the description of the perfect child life specialist, someone who I would love to have every shift with. And I want to ask you, Jessie, what is your perfect ideal PEM attending to work with?
That's a great question. I would say the perfect PEM attending is someone who is open to change in order to make everything as atraumatic as possible. For instance, as a child life specialist, we always prefer to have LMX, which is a numbing cream, on before we do an IV. So as a PEM attending, they can order the LMX. So it's one less step of us asking for that, as well as doing PO medicines by mouth instead of intranasal. I always prefer that, especially when it comes to Versed or anything like that, so that it's an easier way. I understand there's always the times that we have to spray and do it intranasal, but when it's PO, then the child's going to be less anxious. Having attendings get to the child's level while they talk to the patient is always an easier way to get it, so that it's less of the child life specialist having to come in and explain things, for them to be less fearful when they're able to get on the child's level, as well as use the verbiage. So instead of stitches, we say string band-aids, so that they're less fearful. It's a more developmentally appropriate language to have with them. So just being more cautious of what you say, as well as shots, different things like that. Sometimes we even spell things out so that the patient's not listening and the parents are able to understand what the plan is. So the perfect PEM attending is someone who grabs child life as well for procedures, but it's also honest child life specialist. We can see what's going on as well. So we're able to kind of follow where the attendee is and make sure that we are able to help be there and distract and prioritize that as best as we can.
Very good. So that's very good for all of us PEM attendings, PEM fellows, ER residents to know. And again, I think it's definitely, I feel that it's a underused resource, a very good resource that is almost always available. Unfortunately, you guys are not 24/7 there, but you guys are there when it's busy, and it's very helpful. And I gotta admit, sometimes I even forget. But no, I agree that when we use you guys, it always serves better care of the patient, by all means.
Thank you. Yeah, we try our best to not only make it a better experience for the patients and their parents, but for also everyone that we work with as well.
All right, very good. And I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you, Jessie, is, when I think of child life, and I often tell that to people, I feel like you guys have the best job in the world. Your job is to interact with kids and play with kids and play with toys and have fun. It's like the best job in the world. But I think you and I discussed, and there are other aspects that child life had in their daily work that I guess we're not aware of. Can you tell us more a little bit about those?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the parts of child life that not many people are aware of is that we do have those difficult end of life conversations with patients, siblings, if any of their siblings are in the at the end of life or if they're dying, as well as we also are the ones who talk to the siblings of adult patients that die. So we call them our adult consults at our hospital. We do those quite frequently, especially with the whole pandemic going on. So what the memory making can look like is we do handprints, we do canvases, we give locks of hairs, we do heartbeat strips that the parents can keep or the children can keep of their parents. And this can look very different in the emergency department because a lot of our cases are ME cases. So we do have the medical examiner that are there. So for that instance, we can actually use invisible ink, which is really amazing. We rub this cloth on the hand, and then we have specific paper that we can actually use to make it so that the handprints do show up. So it's a really nice way to give these memories to these families, as well as it helps staff a lot too, because if we do have a death, we're able to go in and kind of help make the situation a little bit better and give these lifelong memories.
Very nice. So I guess that's certainly an aspect of child life that I don't see because I work in the pediatric emergency department and we don't have any adult patients. So I think it's very good for our listeners to know that. And it sounds like, again, the job is not always fun and hunky-dory. Unfortunately, if you guys get called for the adult side, because on the adult side, there's a lot more morbidity, certainly a lot more mortality. And my final question for you, Jessie, is if there was one thing you can change about your job, about being a child life specialist, about the patient, or whatever it is, what would it be? What would you change?
Ooh.
Ooh.
I don't know that I would really change anything about my job. I love it so much. I think that I would want to be there 24/7. I think that would be really helpful is to be able to have someone there overnight because I feel like I come in a lot of the times in night shift. They're like, man, we could have used you last night. So I wish that we were there more often.
If you can make that happen, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's my goal. I would love to be a night shift.
Really?
Yes, I would. I love being there even like on the weekends. I'm the only one there after 6 p.m. So I love being able to run around to all the craziness and go on different units. So I think that's a lot of fun. And I definitely think it's something that our hospital is going to have in the future. We have so many child life specialists. It just keeps growing. And it's really exciting to see where it's going to go.
Very good. Excellent. No, I think, there's so many moments in the ER when I say to myself, oh, I wish Jessie was here. Or I wish we had a child life specialist. Sometimes I do call them from upstairs and there's a child life specialist to come upstairs like on a Saturday morning and whatnot. So yeah, I agree. If you guys want to be the 24/7, by all means, be my guest. That's a win-win situation for us and for the patients. Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely do. And I know that I feel like people would appreciate it and they would then learn about us even more because a lot of people are not aware of child life. I wasn't aware of it when I went to college in the beginning. So it's a really fun and I think an important role to have in the hospital.
Absolutely. Perfect. Jessie, thank you very much for coming on the show. Hopefully the next generation of PEM doctors will have child life in their back of their minds 24/7 and it will be just like a standard of care. That'll be fantastic. Thank you so much. And I guess I'll see you on our next shift. I'm working this weekend.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Jessie. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you very much for listening. As usual, please check out PEM Rules. Submit any feedback. I love hearing from you guys. Don't forget, you can also subscribe to my newsletter, the PEM Rules newsletter, and hopefully get some emails, updates, and some clinical pearls. The next outro, Jessie, is especially for you and all of you guys, child life out there who help me do a better job in what I do. Hopefully, probably, you'll recognize the song. If you're in the business of taking care of kids, this has been your song for the last, a year or two. Hope you enjoy it. Have a good day, guys.